Today, October 5th, 2025, the Supreme Court of the United States delivered a landmark decision reshaping American trade policy. The court overturned a key pillar of former President Trump's trade agenda, his widespread use of tariffs. Tariffs, simply put, are taxes on imported goods, making foreign products more expensive to encourage buying American-made goods. Former President Trump used tariffs extensively, arguing they countered unfair trade practices, especially from China. He imposed tariffs on billions of dollars worth of goods, using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, as justification. This law allows the president to regulate commerce during a national emergency. The administration declared unfair trade practices as such an emergency, leading to a legal challenge. Thousands of American companies sued, claiming the president overstepped his authority. The case reached the Supreme Court, questioning the balance of power between the president and Congress. The ruling affects not just tariffs, but also presidential power in the modern era. It will be studied and debated for years, marking a significant moment in trade policy and executive authority. The decision sends a powerful message about the scope of presidential power. It challenges decades of Congress delegating trade authority to the executive branch. The ruling redefines the limits of that delegated power. The legal challenge against Trump's tariffs questioned if the president acted within the law. Importers argued that using IEEP for broad economic policy was an abuse of power. The government's lawyers defended the president's actions, citing the broad language of IEEPA. Lower courts were divided, but a key federal appeals court ruled the tariffs unconstitutional. The Supreme Court had to interpret IEEPA's intent, a tool for specific crises or a blank check for trade policy. The case was about the separation of powers, defining the limits of executive power. It asked the justices to draw a line between the president's emergency authority and Congress's power to make laws. The outcome would define executive power limits for future presidents. In a decisive 7-2 ruling, the Supreme Court struck down the tariffs imposed under IEEPA. The majority opinion by Chief Justice Roberts stated the administration exceeded its authority. The court found the law wasn't meant for long-term industrial policy. The national emergency envisioned by IEEPA must be specific and time-limited. The Constitution gives Congress the primary power to regulate commerce. Allowing the president to use IEEP this way would bypass the legislative process. The decision checks executive power, reaffirming Congress's role in trade policy. The ruling emphasized that sweeping tariff regimes require congressional authorization. The two dissenting justices argued the court overstepped its role. They contended Congress had implicitly consented to the president's actions. However, the majority prioritized the Constitution's separation of powers. The Supreme Court decision opens the door for the U.S. government to repay billions in tariffs collected under IEEPA. This creates a massive administrative challenge for the Treasury Department. Businesses will see a cash influx, potentially boosting investments and hiring. Consumers may eventually see lower prices as import costs decrease. The decision impacts American jobs and industries, with renewed competition from cheaper imports. While some sectors may face job losses, others will benefit from lower costs. Despite the ruling, business uncertainty remains. Other tariffs, like those under Section 232, remain in place. The administration's response is unpredictable, keeping companies cautious. The future of U.S. trade policy is uncertain, forcing businesses to navigate a new landscape. The ruling may push Congress to reclaim a more active role in trade policy. This could lead to more democratic but potentially slower trade policy development. With its primary tariff tool invalidated, the administration must pivot its trade strategy. Officials are expected to focus on other legal avenues like Section 232. This law allows tariffs on goods threatening national security, targeting specific sectors. The era of broad tariffs may be over, replaced by a targeted approach. The administration may negotiate directly with companies and countries. Tariff exemptions could be granted in exchange for U.S. investments. This creates a system of individual negotiations, rewarding well-connected companies. The administration might seek new legislation for explicit tariff authority. However, this would be a difficult political battle, requiring significant compromise. The White House may exhaust existing powers before turning to Congress. The Supreme Court's decision is one of many monumental cases this term. The session tackles contentious social and political issues, examining government power limits. Other major cases include gun rights, medical treatments for transgender minors, and congressional districting. The tariff case fits into a broader theme of defining government-citizen relationships. Another crucial challenge to executive authority involves the president's power over federal agencies. The court reviews the modern presidency's constitutional principles. The docket places the Supreme Court under intense public scrutiny. With a conservative majority, decisions are closely watched for ideological divisions. The justices' decisions reflect nuanced judicial philosophies, shaping the nation's legal landscape. The Supreme Court ruling ends one chapter in trade policy, starting a new one with uncertainties. The decision clarifies the president can't use IEEPA for broad tariff policy. However, it doesn't resolve the protectionism versus free trade debate. Businesses and international partners shouldn't expect a swift return to stable trade relations. The administration's response remains uncertain, with potential new tariff actions. Companies face the threat of targeted government action, affecting long-term planning. Global supply chains will continue to face pressure. The ruling may push Congress to reclaim a more active role in trade policy. This could lead to more democratic but potentially slower trade policy development. Americans should watch the administration's next moves and Congress's response. The future of America's place in the global economy depends on these developments.